further ado, we'll go ahead and get things started. So feel free, whoever's going to share their screen first, just kind of take us through your introductions, a little bit about kind of who you guys are, what city you're in, and kind of what made you want to get kind of the full stack developer skills, and then take us right into to what you guys did.
All right, well, I guess I'll kickstart stuff off. My name is Micah Sturm. I'm in Dallas, and I wanted to do web development because I've really been into creative stuff. I don't know if you can kind of tell, but you're kind of looking into my studio a little bit. But I really wanted to have a skill set that I could bring to the table that in a creative situation not a lot of people would have, and this fit the bill. I'm excited to see where that goes. I'll hand it off to Jessy.
Sorry about that awkward pause. I was trying to unmute my microphone. I'm Jessy. I live in Jupiter, Florida, and I've always kind of had an interest in computers. Like a couple of years now, I've been opening them up, prying them, trying to figure out how they work. And then when I found out that Bethel had a software development course that also included the Kingdom Core, I just had to sign up for it. All right, Brent?
All right, my name is Brent Hinsz, and I live in the Dayton, Ohio area. I'm on the east side of Dayton. I was a little nervous earlier today. Our power went out for a while, and I was really hoping it would be restored on time, and it is. So if I happen to disappear all of a sudden, you kind of know why. So yeah, I got into web developing during my previous job at a university. I did a little bit of HTML coding a while back, a number of years ago, and also did some troubleshooting with some statistical software that I was using. Didn't know the language or anything, but I had a lot of fun troubleshooting it. When they did upgrades and things like that, I had to change some of the syntax, and it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that. And when this opportunity for a full stack web developer came up through Bethel, yeah, I thought it was a good opportunity. So yeah.
All right, so the summary. So our application name is the Green State, kind of based off of a goofy name that we came up for the team, but I ended up creating a proposal based off the name, and we kind of saw the value and how it could be expandable. So the idea is this is an application that can be allow users to rate and post on steakhouses, specifically for right now in Redding, California. So yeah, there were a lot of different technologies we used for this one. We really wanted to test how much we could take on, and on the front end we took on React, JavaScript, Google Maps API, CSS, Axios, and Node, and in the back end we used Express, MongoDB, Mongoose, Passport, JSON Web Tokens, and Bcrypt.
All right, so let's head into the application here. So I did a lot of work on the back end personally and connecting it, especially for the sign in and sign up. So you can actually go ahead and pretty much just sign up for anything here. And I don't know if our password's gonna be good. We have to wait for the back end to wake up because we're using HEROKU, so it went to sleep. There we are. Okay, now the password's not secure enough. Then I'll just log you right in. And you can also sign in, and we actually, on our main web page or landing page, we can also look at the team that developed it, which is us. Woo. So, all right, I'm gonna hand it off to Micah.
So you're logged into Green State now. And when you first open the site, you're going to see 10 of our most recent reviews, along with the title of the restaurants. If you want to click directly on the titles for the review, you can do that, or you can go over to the map side of it and click on one of the buttons. And something that was kind of big for us with this application is we really wanted to make sure that we were using the real estate really well for the website. So we went with this split view. So if you were to click on a specific restaurant, you're going to get the specific reviews for that website, and it doesn't look like it has some very happy customers for this one. But you can continue to go to a different one. You can also go back to the recent reviews in the top right corner. And if you want, you can write your own review under Write a Review. And I'm going to hand it off to Brent, who will show you a little bit more about that.
All right, if you want to write your own review about a particular restaurant, you can just click on one of the restaurants that you want to write a review about. So this one here, we'll go with Jack's Grill. And then it brings up, click on Write a Review, and then you can go ahead and enter whatever it is that you wanted to post about that restaurant, that steakhouse. Once you get your review written, then you can come down to the bottom and then rate it according to the number of stars that you feel it deserves, 1 to 5. This customer here wasn't very happy regarding that steakhouse. And that gets automatically saved, and then and then when you click on that steakhouse later, that review will come up.
Yeah. And I also wanted to mention that generally when you're looking for a restaurant, you might not be at home. So of course we even have a mobile view set up that you can sign in, and it won't show the map, and it changes all the buttons for a drop down. And of course, you can go to write a review, and the stars are going to be larger and easier to select.
All right, one of the challenges that I came across when doing this with the star rating was that we had 2 different star ratings there, one for price and one for quality. And when I entered both of those in there, there was a problem where when I selected the second one for quality, it changed the price one. So to solve this, a person needs to change the ID of the stars to be different from the first set. So on the first line there where it says input radio star 5, the ID on that one was star 5, and then for the price, for rating the price, and then for rating the quality, instead of a 5, I went to 10. So for the price, it was star 1 through 5, and then for quality, it was star 6 through 10. That way, when you selected the appropriate star on each one, would work independently. So that told me then that whenever you have items on a web page, you need to have different IDs for each one of them.
All right, so I worked a lot, again, like I said, on authentication and authorization. So for authentication, I remember going through the course and they talked about Passport and they talked about JSON Web Tokens, but they didn't really go over how to use them together or how to use them with the React application, because when we were building that sample application, it was all done in Express and it wasn't connected to a front end. So for authentication, when you fill in the sign-in or the sign-up, it'll actually send that form data to the back end and to a respective route in the back end, which will use the passport's local strategy, and then it'll check the inputted data against regex, and then it'll use bcrypt on the password, and then it'll end up returning the email as the JSON Web Token, which allows you to sign in. And then in part of authorization, instead of using the authorization script is actually held inside one of the main components of the application. I believe it's the one where it lists the steakhouses, and that sends a request to the backend with the JSON Web Token, which will make sure you're signed in, sending a logged in true or false.
Yeah, well, I can tell you I had a lot of issues, but that being said, I wanted to bring up this one particularly because we decided to deploy on HEROKU, which was simple enough in the actual deployment, but getting it error-free was another task because the way it's set up is kind of specific, so that's why I want to go over it. HEROKU's configuration is kind of dependent on the status of innate configuration environment variables that you actually set within HEROKU itself. So if you haven't set those environment variables according to how your package.json is set, it's going to do different things based on what you're doing. So I was getting a lot of syntax errors for a long time until I figured out that with the version of Babel that we had installed for Node, we had installed a CLI, that it would technically be a dev dependency. So I had to set all of HEROKU's environmental variables to recognize that dev dependency so it would actually deploy, which is not something that I initially thought of, but something I found out. And yeah.
So we're just gonna take a little pause before the end and see if there's any questions anyone wanted to ask. Can't really see that chat right now.
Was there a option to add a steakhouse or just to review the existing ones?
We were gonna do that, but we ran out of time.
Gotcha. Okay. Just wasn't sure I was missing any extra buttons that weren't visible or something. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, everything shows.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. Very well done and very well articulated as well with the explanations on all the different pieces and the kind of the issues that you came across. It's definitely good practice for sure. And yeah, like I said, very impressive from like the styling and kind of feel of it with the split screens and all that. It's definitely a good concept and definitely very user friendly. And even the responsiveness as well is huge these days. So that skill as well will definitely come in handy. So very good. A lot of good comments from the team here at Woz U kind of tuning in to the demonstration. So thank you for those kind words as well. And you guys kind of talked about a little bit about what made you guys come up with the idea. Is mainly, if you want to go into it, you said kind of using the maps and then talk about kind of the thought process. Did you guys have any other app ideas and how did you definitely decide on this one?
I mean, we did have each an idea. This one that we created was actually Micah's original idea. I believe what Brent wanted to do was he wanted to build kind of an inventory management system, and I wanted to build kind of like a health food tracker using one of the government databases. But we decided that this one would probably give us the biggest challenge and we'd learn the most from this one.
Awesome. And did you find using the Google Maps API to be easy or difficult or about what you expected or?
Yes and no to that, because it's easy enough to implement. Their documentation is phenomenal, but it's updated so frequently that actually finding like either with the time limit, we'd either have to build it out all ourselves, or we would need to download an npm package to help us. And because Google updates so frequently, those go out of date really, really fast. So moving forward, to be honest, if this was a project that I was trying to do with a small team like this again, I probably wouldn't use Google. But if it was like maybe for a larger company where they could keep track of that type of stuff a little bit better, then yes. It's difficult to use just because it kind of updates pretty rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And that, yeah, in itself is just a kind of a learning experience as well. To be aware of kind of things like that is huge. So very cool. And then you kind of talked a little bit about dividing up the responsibilities and stuff. Was it pretty easy like from the very beginning, or did it kind of evolve over time? If you could talk about a little bit on how that kind of, shook itself out there.
Well, the way we planned it and the way it worked out is quite different, because Brent is actually a Java developer and me and Micah are JavaScript students. So it took us, we were originally going to do maybe Brent works on the front end and then me and Micah works on the back end. But it was clear that Brent needed a little bit of help actually working on the front end. So Micah went over and helped him, and I ended up staying mostly on the back end. And every week it took us a while to really get down our week, to plan out our weeks really well, because at first we didn't really have any idea what we were doing. We didn't know how to actually like what task and how long it would take to do that task, how difficult each task would be. And as we went along, we definitely refined that, and we started really steamrolling it.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely takes some practice for sure. So once you kind of get the understanding of how it works, then it's like, all right, now it's just practice after that. So awesome. And you did talk a little bit about the kind of the next things you might add to the functionality if you had a little bit more time, the option to, add more restaurants just on the fly. What else would you guys want to kind of potentially add?
Well, like I said, I don't think that Google's API would be very well suited for a team of this size. I would probably switch it over to Uber has its own React-based mapping system that's not only is it pretty flexible for what we're needing, but it's a little bit easier to track endpoints, and the design element of it would be a lot easier. So it would be a lot easier to create a design that actually fits better with the site itself and creates a better aesthetic. I feel like that would be where I want to start.
Gotcha.
I actually want to add on to that, because it's really easy to create a review, but we didn't get around to making a way to like edit or delete reviews that you leave in case it was a typo or in case you changed your mind. So we maybe would have added that as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I think, yeah, like I said, definitely very impressive for the time and the diversity of locations and time zones and languages, like you mentioned. So a lot of different factors came into play, but congratulations, you guys were able to pull it off. And like we said, very, very impressive. And I think the last question we have for you guys, let you off the hook, is if you could give any advice to kind of people that are currently in the program and then in the project phase currently, if you have any kind of bits of advice for those students.
I would say to definitely take a good amount of time planning out the tasks for the week and then breaking them apart, because sometimes we would write down a task and then we'd realize it was actually going to be way more difficult than that, and we'd have to break it up. And you definitely just spend a lot of time planning the week. Don't rush it.
Yeah, and kind of like just to piggyback off of that, like, do your homework on what it would actually take before you try to plan it out. Like, especially if you're using certain packages and stuff, like, do your homework on that stuff before you just start downloading and you're trying to create your plan for the week based off of the stuff that you've just briefly Googled. Like that sort of, honestly, I would have liked to not use Google API if we could. And if I could go back, I wouldn't use it from the get-go because I would have done a lot more research on it and realized sort of the issues that we were having from the get-go. But that's sort of what we had with the time we were dealt. And yeah, if you do a little bit more research, you're not just downloading stuff and creating confusion in your projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to mention too, the planning it out, each task is really vital, and also communication, so that each of you knows what each of you is working on. That way there's no duplication going on in tasks, and make more efficient use of your time that way.
Awesome. And lastly, what does the next 30 days look like for you guys?
For me, it's probably going back and doing some more reviewing on some of the things that I maybe didn't cover in the project, and making sure my resume and everything is updated. And I wouldn't mind actually going back and learning a different language.
For me, I guess I'd probably want to go back to certain points too. It's kind of obvious to see where your weak points are when you're actually looking at the big picture. But also, there are certain concepts that I've really wanted to get onto. It's sort of why I pursued this. WebGL, computer animations, being able to do that type of stuff. So looking into that and seeing how that overlays with what I've already learned and what I can do with it.
I'd probably start working on a career, because I know the only job I really have has been a part-time job at the grocery store. I mean, I graduated high school maybe 2 years ago and haven't really done anything much after that. And I might want to start working on building my career, maybe work on some other personal projects that I wanted to do, like the health tracker app idea I had. I might want to start working on that.
Awesome. Yeah, and see just how quickly you can turn that from an idea in your head to functioning, and see if you can do it in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever you want to put a deadline on it. See if you can hit that goal and go from there. Yeah, it's definitely a good practice. But thanks again, for everything with the demo today, guys. Excellent work. I'll kind of start wrapping it up here, and like I said, I'll have the